Let's go. Let's go. On a Saturday night, there is no football. And we had the Senior Bowl earlier today, but that's not really football. They care more about the practices than they do the actual games. But look, we start tonight's live stream with some excellent news, baby. Will Campbell, you're the next Andrew Whitworth. Will Campbell, you're the next Tyrann Black. Will Campbell, if you put in the work. And I was looking at Will Campbell's Instagram page. That kid puts in the work. If you put in the work, you'll be a great LSU football player. Will Campbell, let's go. Finally, 4-star offensive lineman. Let's go. Let's go. Are you guys fired up? I mean, come on. I'm wearing my new jacket my girlfriend got for me for my birthday. Y'all look, Liverpool Football Club. Yeah. Take that, Jacob Hester. He's an Everton fan. My boy Gordy Rush is a Tottenham fan. But I'm a Liverpool fan, baby. Mo Salah, Steven Gerrard. But anyway, that's for a different discussion for a different day. And by the way, you guys know how much I love freaking Jacob Hester. But that's a soccer thing. Anyway, we say hi to Marcus. We say hi to Moses. We say hi to Overtime, Nick, Arik, Jay Morsey. Oh, yeah. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. So, obviously, we have that. We have a full coaching staff now. We got Daronte Jones leading the defense. We got Andre Carter leading the defensive line. Those two used to work with each other at Miami. We also have Blake Baker coming in from Miami, the U, not the NFL, but the U. Last year, they were 40th in defensive efficiency, which isn't good, not bad. But as we discussed, Miami's defense was bad against the better opposition, but really good against bad opposition. So they performed as expected. We have that to talk about. We have a full offensive staff. I've been doing some digging on Jake Peets and DJ Mangus, trying to get an idea of what our offense is going to look like next year. So, and Overtime brings this up as well. LSU's also had a few decommitments. But look, this is a 2022 class. And I say buyer beware on every kid in this class because it's so freaking long until signing day. So go on ahead, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Super Chat is wide open. And as you guys know, on a Saturday night where there's no games, our live streams are pushed by your Super Chats. So if you Super Chat a topic, we immediately get to it. And as always, I'll have to put this on right here. I didn't do this before the thing, so I apologize. Venmo, Cash App, this is my username. Ice Anderson decommitted. And Super Chat is wide open. All right. Boom. Boom. So once again, if you want to control the topic, it is up to you with the Super Chats. But as we always do, this is breaking news. Will Campbell just announced this less than an hour ago. And I brought this up yesterday, and Shea Dixon brought this up on his piece just a minute ago. The highest rated offensive lineman in the state of Louisiana since Cam Robinson, who was also a North Louisiana Tiger. So it's interesting because a lot of LSU's 4-star offensive linemen have panned out. Will Clapp, Garrett Brumfield, that list goes on. But on Monday, and I think I'm going to release this on Monday, all day today, I was doing research on offensive linemen in the state of Louisiana. Okay, so we go straight to Max, our first Super Chat of the night. Round of applause for Max. Can we talk about the lame peach emoji rumors, excuse of a rumor of why Eli Ricks wants to transfer? So, yeah, so much has been made of what Derek Stingley Sr. told T-Bob earlier this week, that the reason why Elias Ricks was thinking about transferring is because he was going through rehab of his shoulder. It's something along the lines of that. And like I said in our video earlier this week, normally when I do videos, I'm just doing a video based on something LSU football. But sometimes when I get so many questions from viewers, I do a video based on that. And the number one question I've gotten this past week have been the Elias Ricks rumors. Like I said, it's just a rumor. It's just a rumor. In the grand scheme of things, it would be shocking, and I mean shocking, that he did not play for LSU next year. It would blow me away in so many different facets, okay? What's up, Huntsville? Welcome, brother. Look, first thing with Elias Ricks, single-digit jersey number. Those are hard to get. He got the number 1 jersey. He got a starting position. Those two things are rare, even if you're a 5-star at an SEC Power 5 level, okay? Also, and this is key, he was exceptional. Also, he's at the school that is known for defensive backs. LSU's brand, its strongest brand, is defensive backs. Nothing comes close to that. What can be better than what he has now? And the coach that they hired to be the defensive coordinator is probably as good of a defensive coordinator you can ask for if you're an elite corner, an actual NFL defensive backs. So now, an NFL defensive backs coach. So now Elias Ricks has an NFL DB coach, the best DB coach in college football, a starting position, and if Derek Stingley Jr. plays next year, which he will, that was an even dumber rumor. If Derek Stingley Jr. plays on the opposite side, guess what? Elias Ricks is going to get a lot of targets thrown his way, which will lead to more action and more pick sixes. Now, as many of you know, and I want to shout out Huntsville here, when I was actually doing media, I would interview the players and I would ask a bunch of X's and O's questions. And if you remember on 1/9/12, all right, we all try to forget that day. But the biggest change in the game plan that Alabama did was they explicitly said in the rematch, we are not going to throw the football to Morris Claiborne's side. We're not going to do it. We're just simply not going to do it. It is off. They legit said that in their game plan. And if you remember, Mo Claiborne didn't have any targets in that game. Well, you know, Alabama's defense was so great, they didn't really have to throw at all. But if you have two elite corners on both sides of the field, you're going to get action. You're going to get more pick sixes, especially next year. LSU's pass rush is going to be even better than what it was this year. So you could not ask for a better situation if you're a cornerback. So hopefully that answers your question, Max. Look, I've said the same thing over and over and over. And I know Marcus, who watches all of my stuff, and a lot of you that watch all of my stuff, I repeat this over and over. No one player makes a team, and I want every kid to do what they feel is best for themselves. Okay? Both of those things can happen and LSU be very successful. Right? So, whatever Eli Ricks decides to do, I'm fully behind him. Once again, he's up there. Probably my favorite defensive back I've watched in high school since Ardarius Washington. Elias Ricks was that much fun to watch on high school film. He just pops off a page. He gave us one great year. I hope he gives us two more. And then he's the first corner taken. And that's true. LG, Little Germanicus. Welcome, man. Thank you. I think you're newer to the channel. Thank you for all your comments on all my videos. I really appreciate that. And Jay Morsey brings up a good point as well. Are we sleeping on Jay Ward? Are we sleeping on Jay Ward just a little bit? You know, that kid, look, I want to give Jay Ward a lot of credit. I'm glad you brought that up, Jay Morsey. Jay Ward had an awful first game of the year against Mississippi State. They exposed him, but he was hurt. He was playing because obviously Sting had the hospitalization, and then they tried to put the kid out there from Nichols. He wasn't ready. It was Elias Ricks' first game, so Jay Ward had to play hurt. He wasn't fully healthy. He didn't get to fully go through the Moffitt system, and he wasn't ready. But that kid kept working. He won us the game against Arkansas. Really big piece to the reason why we beat Ole Miss with this pick six. Are we sleeping on Jay Ward just a little bit? Because, you know, the buzz is Sage Ryan. The buzz is Derek Davis Jr. The buzz is Demarius McGee coming in. But I think Jay Ward could be that next guy. And then you had Dwight McGlothern. So, you know, maybe we need to talk about Jay Ward just a little bit more. Let's go to Marcus here with you on that, Carter. I'm a firm believer that I'd rather have my second best guy fully engaged than my top guy half engaged. But I also agree with you that I'd be shocked to leak. And this is a great point. This is a great point. There is nothing that you could value more as a coach than a kid who is your best player also be the kid that is your most engaged player, okay? And I'm going to say something here that's going to be a little controversial. And I actually cut this out from my piece earlier this week regarding Derek Stingley Jr. I think it is important that your best player speak to the media. It's very important. So last year, and this is according to the LSU beat writer. I spoke to an LSU beat writer about this, and he said that Derek Stingley Jr. made 0 media appearances. Okay? So you might think that that's irrelevant. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not. But when you speak on behalf of your team to the media, you are speaking on behalf of your team. Okay? It is important for you to do that because, well, you're the most fascinating guy on the team. Derek Stingley Jr. had the biggest fan base of LSU fans ever for a defensive player after just one season. Y'all remember this offseason? So, you know, obviously the story of 2019 was Joe Burrow. But the story of the 2019 defense was this Derek Stingley Jr. guy who we knew was a 5-star. We knew he was from Baton Rouge. We know his dad is very active, and his dad gives great interviews every week to T-Bob on Tuesdays. When you speak on behalf of the team, it's kind of important for you to be fully engaged. And it's important for you to be the leader. And when the face of the team, because look, all the guys that were key players on the 2019 team were gone. Then Jamar Chase said, okay, I'm not playing. Then Tyler Shelvin, then Kerry Vincent. So the 2 remaining key players on the 2019 team outside of Austin Deculus were Terrace Marshall, who played exemplary last year, and Derek Stingley Jr. Those are the 2 big pieces, okay? Jacoby Stevens was back. I get that. He got the number 7 uniform. But Sting was the star. I want to hear from him. I'm so interested on what goes through the mind of a great cornerback because there is a different mentality to play the position of corner. And that's the thing. What's up, Carvis? About time. Taylor, Dwight McGlothern will be Stingley's replacement, hopefully in 2 years. But here's the thing. I think Derek Stingley Jr. obviously had a bunch of weird injuries this year. And, if he comes back healthy, he's probably the best player in college football. I mean, he was that great in 2019. The only game in 2019 where he was not good was Alabama. And what we know now about Devonta Smith makes perfect sense as to why in 2019 he had a rough game. But if he's fully healthy and Ricks is fully healthy, that alone wins you half of your games. How are you going to throw the football? How are you going to throw the football? So we'll see. Derek Stingley's quiet. You could see that. I don't see him talking trash on the field either. He doesn't. That's what a lot of people say. He's super quiet. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But, I'm interested. I'm very interested. Sometimes players are so good, I'm interested to hear what they have to say. And this is quiet, and this is just something that I do. Every interview Nick Saban gives before a big game, I listen to all of it. Even if everything he says is boring and mundane and the process, well, Nick Saban does this coaching thing better than everybody. So I want to squeeze every bit of info I can out of that. And the same thing is true for Derek Stingley. He played at such a ridiculously high level that, outside of really Patrick Peterson, we had never seen a corner at the true freshman level play at that level. And, Sting's true freshman year was arguably better than PP7's. It's close. But, there's a difference between like being quiet and then, representing your team. And, that's what fascinates me. I like that, Carver. It's an ideal scheme, Mr. Let Stingley cover the best guy and let Eli Ricks and Dwight McGlothern be the boundary guys. Yeah, look, if Sting is fully back, if Ricks is back and they're healthy, that is the best cornerback duo since Morris Claiborne and Patrick Peterson in 2010. Now, there have been some other good ones. But if both of them are fully healthy, I might take that duo over PP7 and Claiborne. And that is that's a Thorpe. Both of them won the Thorpe. But yeah, it's a big if. It's a big if. And maybe it's a good idea to put Ricks in the slot since he can rover and make more plays and pick off more passes over the middle, because his interception against Florida was him playing zone and just taking a chance. Yeah, it's true, Mikey. A lot of people did question that. That's what, quite a few people said about Ricks coming out. He's not the fastest guy. But I'll tell you this. I would be seriously surprised if Darrelle Revis was a top 10 NFL corner in terms of speed. It never looked like Darrelle Revis was that fast, but he was just smart. He was good at just making all different kinds of catches. Devonta Smith said it himself. It was the best cornerback he faced by far. And a lot of the catches that Devonta made in 2019 versus Sting, a lot of it were really difficult catches. So, and one was on like a little fluky trick play. That's a good point, Marcus. And that's where Sage Ryan becomes very interesting. Since he's not doing the spring ball, how quickly can he be implemented into the system? Because, I see Derek Davis as a pure center fielder type of safety. So we'll see. So, Mikey, hopefully that answered your question. Let's see. Rajon will sign Wednesday. Overtime says he expects Derek Davis Jr. to start as a true freshman. Funky, I think you're talking about Jordan Tolles. You know, the best thing that happened to Jordan Tolles last year was him getting burnt versus Auburn. It's the best thing that can happen to you. The best thing that can happen to you if you don't play a lot of plays is you get burnt. Because what Jordan Tolles is doing now in the offseason is doing everything he can to make sure that doesn't happen next year. Because until you get a taste of failure, and that's the same thing with Elias Ricks. You know, his first big play was a touchdown he gave up versus Mississippi State. Sometimes the best thing for a defensive back is a little bit of failure. But here's the thing, and this is what I like about this channel, is that you guys don't mind 20 minutes of defensive back talk. I'm all about it. Think about this. Think about how die-hard of an LSU fan you guys are. We've not had games in months. We had a Senior Bowl today. But our live chat has just been about an offensive lineman who won't play next year at all, and the secondary. This is what I love about you guys. You guys like to get down into the nitty-gritty with LSU football, because for the longest, I was like, wait, are there people out here like me that randomly think about Arden Key? Like just earlier today, I just randomly started thinking about Arden Key. And I started thinking about Elliott Porter. I just think about all these random LSU football players. I'm telling you, over time, and this is it. You know, I don't want basic LSU talk. I want people checking me. I want people correcting me. I want a good debate, because, you know, that's the funny thing about college football. We love LSU football so freaking much that, you know, it's only played 12 to 15 times a year, right? But we love it. And our sample sizes are so small, which leaves all this open room for debate, right? 20-minute DB talk, baby. Oh, and look, we're probably one of the few schools that could talk about DBs for 20 minutes. Yeah. You know what, Quinn? I agree with you. And you know, I'm actually writing not a book, but kind of a book on why I think Patrick Peterson is the best LSU player of the past few decades of the championship era. But I don't want to get in that debate now. So, Quinn, I'm with you, and welcome to the show. What's up, Nolan? XV3, what's up, baby? So, you know, for Sage Ryan, I wouldn't just put him out there immediately. I know some of you are asking me about Sage. You know what, Max? And this is going to sound weird, but Barkevious Mingo was never a 4-3 defensive end. Now, Barkevious was a really good 4-3 defensive end for college football. And, you know, he had the most ridiculous tape of just chasing down LaMichael James and all these super fast running backs. But he never got proper training to be a 3-4 outside linebacker. And, you know, that's what every NFL team wanted him to be, because he couldn't play 4-3 defensive end. He's not like Daniil Hunter. He didn't have a lot of meat on his bones. And, you know, that's why Mingo was a top 10 pick, because he had all those traits, but it didn't work out. You know what, Carver? See, I would say that's the Mount Rushmore right there. Those four guys. And, you know, Dorsey's in that discussion, Jamar, those guys. But I do believe PP7 is a non-negotiable there. Let's see. You know what, Cody? I do mean this, and I really do mean this from the bottom of my heart. The Rose Bowl was the coolest sporting event I've ever gotten to cover. And the Superdome will always be my number one sporting venue. But the Rose Bowl is the most beautiful sight. It is so majestic. I get chills thinking about it. And, when I was flown out there to cover that game, I was like, okay, it's just another college football game. I've covered national championship games. Look, it's unlike anything I've ever seen before. And, part of it, that was my first time ever being in California. But, the Rose Bowl is just so gorgeous. And if you're able to make the trip, and if our world is a safer world at that point, it's a bucket list thing. Going to that stadium is bucket list level stuff. Oh, Revis ran a 4.38. Well, then Darrelle Revis is a freak of nature. Yeah, a lot of the young fans don't remember Eddie Kinnison or Skylar Green or Kev Falk. Well, look, Kev Falk, I said the championship era, so that's 03 until now. So we weren't talking about old school guys. So XV3, I don't want to, because I am writing something on this right now. So, Tyrann Mathieu's interesting because when you talk, and trust me, I like Tyrann Mathieu as much as I like Patrick Peterson. In fact, I've spent some of the money that I've made on this channel to reinvest into a Patrick Peters. I say a Tyrann Mathieu card. It's currently in California being graded by PSA, and so that's the only one that I have currently being graded. So Tyrann Mathieu is up there with Patrick Peterson, but part of your legacy, and we tend to forget this aspect of it. Part of your legacy is everything. So, the final year, so the 2011 thing happened, and then in 2012, we expected him to lead us, and, he wasn't there. And this is a great lesson for all of us in life. And Tyrann Mathieu's talked about it plenty of times. Your best ability is your availability. Always, it's the number one thing. And Marcus made a good point earlier. It's not just physically being there. It's mentally being there. Mentally being invested. And if you do not have guys that are your best players that are not physically and mentally there, your team's going to tank. So part of Tyrann Mathieu's legacy is the greatest single defensive season we've ever seen by defensive back, which was 2011, the best we've ever seen, the most unique defensive season we've ever seen. There's two of them. There's Derek Thomas at Alabama, the 27 sack season, which was ridiculous. And then there's Tyrann Mathieu with the season he had in 2011. But part of your legacy is also what you did after, right? So in 2012, we needed Tyrann Mathieu to carry the team. I'm not calling him out. I'm not. But it's part of it. And he will tell you the same thing as well. Now, this isn't me hating on Tyrann Mathieu. Obviously, I thought it was BS that he was kicked off the team for, drug testing and weed. We talked about this in the last live stream. So, if he came back and played, he would easily be the best LSU defensive player of all time. But, the 2012 season was a waste in large part because our best player, Tyrann Mathieu, in 2011 was the best player. He was not only our best defensive player, he was also our best offensive player with the fumbles and the returns and the field position, and we didn't have him in 2012. So always remember that when you're talking about the greatest players of all time. Everything happens, okay? The reason why LeBron James is the greatest of greatest, along with Michael Jordan, is that he's available. Never been hurt, never been gone for a serious amount of times, and he is there mentally and physically at all times. Why do you think people don't like James Harden? Because he's mentally and physically not there at all times. So everything about and look, Tyrann has far, he has atoned for those errors. And I don't want this to think that this is Tyrann Mathieu slander, but that's the only reason I have Patrick Peterson ahead of Tyrann Mathieu. That's the only reason. Those two are neck and neck, and then it's Jamal Adams and whoever else after that. But those two are on a different level when it comes to all-time great LSU defensive backs. But the only thing is just that final year. That's it. Let's go to Cody here. Thank you for the super chat. So let's do this first, Cody. Let's do this. What do you guys think of the Blake Baker hire? So I did a piece earlier this week. How would you grade the Blake Baker hire? A, B, C, D. How would you grade it? Cody, I'm going to get everyone's opinion on this. I know SPH, that sounds so old school, but it's true. Are you available? Okay, let's see. Michael says C. Eric says C. Jay Marseille says B. Baker hire BMO Funky C. I know he is not the code DC. He's not. B minus. He does have an extended role. We don't know exactly what that is. But he is officially just the linebackers coach. B, lots of B's. Mikey says A. If he's just a linebacker coach, B+. Carver says B. Ingram says C. So, my opinion on Blake is a little bit complicated, right? So, let's first start by saying this. The Andre Carter hire was a home run for a lot of different reasons. Played in the NFL, coached in the NFL, has a good track record of developing guys in the NFL. Cameron Wake, Quinnen Williams, because when Quinnen Williams started his career, he wasn't that great. And then Andre Carter helped develop him. So, and a lot of Quinnen Williams, he was transcendently good at Alabama at defensive tackle. So, I love the Andre Carter hire. I think that was as good as it gets. I give that an A. Blake, I give it a B. All right. So his recruiting acumen is not great, right? He's not an all-time great recruiter. Now, that's according to 247's rankings. Also, something else that makes me a little worried is Miami. Their fans wanted him out. And this was universal. I looked far and wide for Miami fans. Now, look, Florida football fans in general, whether it be Florida State or Gator or Hurricane fans, they are not always the most rational, okay? But even then, it was universal that they wanted this guy out, right? They would have taken Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson over Blake Baker calling the plays. How much was Blake Baker calling the plays? How much was it Manny Diaz? Here are some facts. In 2019, Miami had one of the best defenses in college football. In 2020, they were really good against bad teams, and they were really bad against good teams. What's up, Kane? So, also, Blake Baker was a defensive coordinator. So, in essence, he is taking a demotion, but only in title and in pay, right? But he is moving closer to home. It does make sense. LSU is obviously a far better program than Miami. I don't care what you 80s folks have to say. That's great. You got a documentary out of it. Michael Irvin, whatever. LSU's way better than Miami. He's closer to home. But when there's smoke, there's fire. So there is a piece of me that's like, well, why would they bring him from Louisiana Tech? And he was so good in 2019, but then Diaz stripped his play calling ability. But now he's coming to LSU where he's not going to be the play caller. Or is he going to be the play caller? Is that the reason why they hired him? Because they also have a defensive backs coach who hasn't called plays since his 20s. And it was at a non-Power 5 level. So I'm kind of mixed on that one. I agree with what Marcus said, and I know I agree with Marcus a lot. He's been with me for a while, but he and I think a lot alike. He makes a good point. I believe Andre Carter was the best hire out of this bunch. I believe that is the most slam dunk hire, but his role is clearly defined. He's going to coach a defensive line. Now, how the defensive play calling responsibilities go from here are going to be very interesting. The first thing I want to discuss with Blake Baker is that it is not important for him so much to be a great recruiter. Why? Well, Ed Orgeron's a great recruiter. You don't need him to be a great recruiter. Ed Orgeron could pick up that slack. But if Blake Baker can coach the linebackers up, a position group that was not good last year, and the one guy who was, for the most part, good is now gone, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know if Blake Baker is a linebacker sensei or anything like that, so we'll see. But I agree with Jay Morsey here. I do think LSU runs a dangerous gambit if they tell Blake Baker, we want you to co-DC in essence and help call the plays. Because a lot of you watched LSU football, and as you guys know, we just did 20 minutes on defensive backs, from Eli to Tyrann Mathieu and all the great ones, okay? The one thing we saw last year that is inexcusable for an LSU secondary is miscommunication. The best way to fix miscommunication is if one person is determining where everybody goes. Now, I have no problem with Blake Baker helping Daronte Jones put together a game plan. But when it comes to calling plays, I just want one person doing it. So let's see here. Marcus says, I have been more excited to have a guy who I've been happy with the play caller in that role if we were bringing in Daronte. And, to that point, I am happy that LSU does have someone who's called plays before to help out put together a game plan. But Marcus makes a good point. And a lot of LSU fans feel this way. And I'm happy that he's saying this because, I think sometimes when we want to be critical of LSU football, we don't want to be labeled as a hater. Look, we're all fans here. This is a good point. Daronte hasn't been able to stick with any NFL teams and hasn't had any experience with play calling. Well, he did at Bowie State, but we continue. So it's a big risk to let him be a primary defensive coordinator, especially against fast-paced offense. It's hard to disagree with that. There is a lot of skepticism with this hire. And I know we're excited about this. I'm excited about this. I think Daronte, if you listen to the way Marvin Lewis has talked about him, to Mike Zimmer, and the list goes on. But Minnesota did not run a fast-paced offense. Okay? Now, they had great receivers. They have arguably the best receiver tandem in the NFL, along with one of the best running backs in the NFL. But they did play at a slow pace with Kirk Cousins. So it's very interesting. Now, Kendall makes a good point. Our guy, Danielle Hunter, did miss the entire season. So that obviously hurt the Minnesota defense. So it's complicated. However, Marcus does make a good point. He has bounced around quite a bit. Let's go to Mo Funky. Defensive coordination is a lot more improv than offensive coordinating. DC needs to be in. I agree with that to a certain extent. Your defense has to be able to adjust to your offense, right? And then we can get into defensive scheme. I know some of you are a believer in running a 4-3 or a 4-2 nickel or whatever. It's interesting. Huntsville, I was just hearing the Saban interview, or, there was a leak video today of Saban doing a recruiting pitch of doing exactly what SPH said right now. That's a good point, Marcus, to be there. Because look, every time you have a first-year coordinator, there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be a lot of hiccups. And Coach Smith makes a good point. Can't be no worse than this year. You're right. And that's the thing. There are two things what made the LSU defense so bad, right? Part of what made the LSU defense so bad this year is there are two basic tenets to defense that you cannot do in the modern day. So it used to be in defense that the most important thing to do was to stop the run up the middle, okay? So we got to stop the run. Well, that is partially true. You do need to stop the run. You don't want to give up 9 and 10 yards per running play. But now with the way passing offenses are, the number one thing that you must do as a defense, and I know it seems like common sense, but you legit need to start, and coordinators now need to start coordinating their defense to doing this one thing well. Don't get beat deep over the top. Especially, thank you so much, baby, for my punch. Thank you so much. And she's the one that got me this lovely Liverpool jacket. I know I mentioned this earlier, but that's my favorite jacket I've ever gotten. Thanks, babe. But the number one thing you need to do is to not give up deep passes. I know it sounds just wild, and it sounds so simple. But I don't mind, as Marcus points out, as Overtime points out, I don't mind 6 and 7 yard runs up the middle. Because analytically, and this seems like common sense as well, but we have to start talking about this as far as scheme is concerned. Analytically, when teams run the football, it is not as efficient as when they throw the football. For instance, the Ole Miss game. Ole Miss was up by 2. And you know what they decided to do up by 2? We missed a 2-point conversion. They got the ball back. They decided to run the football on first and second down when they had been throwing it all over the place. Now, why would they do that? Doesn't make any sense. So every time you run the football, you are doing the defense a favor because passing plays have proven to be more analytically efficient. Now, that doesn't mean you don't run the football, but still, that's why you can't get beat deep. But what did the LSU defense do? Well, in a 4-3 or a 4-2, whatever, nickel, your safeties have to be all-world players. They have to be really good. Well, Jacoby Stevens regressed, and we just kept getting beat over the top, okay? Todd Harris had a rough start to the year. He finished really strong. Mo Hampton just had a bad year, and I completely whiffed because I thought he was special. He might be better next year. We'll see. But that was the first tenet of defense. We gave up way too many deep passes. You will lose if you give up deep passes. Chunk plays, even in games where we dominated time of possession and the defense was well rested, a la Arkansas and South Carolina. In both of those games, we had 7 plays we gave up for 20 yards or more. Now, that is the first tenet. So let's go to the second tenet of what the Daronte Jones defense needs to do. Because this is something that, it's a tenet in comedy as well. Go from broad to specificity. And I've always found that to be very interesting. If you go broad to specific, it always makes things a lot easier for you as a coach and for your players. So your number one tenet, don't give up deep passes. Something we did way too much last year in every game outside of Vanderbilt. Deep pass after deep pass after deep pass. Number two, when stopping the run, you must keep contain. Okay? Now, SPH, he played college defensive line. He's watching this now. So he's used to hearing coaches say this. Keep contain. Don't give up easy runs to the outside. If you're going to make them run, force them inside. Make them cut back into your linebackers and into your safeties. But what did LSU's defense not do? We sucked at keeping contain. Go look at the South Carolina tape. Go look at the Auburn tape. It never got fixed. We could never keep contained. We simply couldn't do it. As hard as we tried, we couldn't do it. So those two things, if you want to just oversimplify the problems of the LSU defense, those two things killed us. Those two things. So if we fix those two things, we'll automatically be better. And Carvis makes another point that is kind of embarrassing to say out loud, which is why I did the piece before the season on Tommy Moffitt. LSU's players weren't in shape. They weren't in shape. They simply weren't. We were not conditioned the same way we were in 2019, which makes sense because Tommy Moffitt didn't get a chance to do his normal thing. That's why those things are important. We were very bad out of shape. It's hands on hips. And that's kind of an embarrassing thing to say out loud. But it's true. We looked very tired. And that was both sides of the ball. I'll tell you this. One guy who looked better, Terrace Marshall. And that's something else that Ed Orgeron has to answer to. So, you know what the funniest juxtaposition of, and Donovan, all about Sage Ryan, because the 4-3 needed the most coverage you can get and have run-stuffing defensive linemen. We get intense debates over the 4-3-3-4. So, what's up, Bruce? About time he joined us. Michael is a Dwight McGlothern fan. I like that. By the way, if you want to move on to a different topic, I know some of you are here to talk about Will Campbell. Feel free to super chat. And we will go back to, once again, if you super chat or Venmo cash at me, guess what? Immediately, your question moves to the front of the list. Okay. So you know what's funny? And this is a very macro view. All right, we just talked about two macro things. And I think we can agree that, number one, LSU sucked defending deep passes, which doesn't make sense when you have good corners. Number two, LSU could not keep contained in the running game. We gave up so many easy runs to the outside, and teams picked on us. And the Auburn and South Carolina games were the games that really stuck out when it came to that. Okay? And Debbie, that's a good point too. Terrace looked good with all three quarterbacks, and that's true. It's crazy how good that guy was. It really is crazy, considering he had one major injury in high school, and then he had an injury the 2019 season, and he came back better after that second injury. That guy's just different. And you could tell the players that are really well mentally put together. He's one of those guys. I mean, he's special. He's really special. So, and I was thinking last night, I was struggling going to bed, trying to think of something to tell you guys that, a lot of you come here to hear fresh opinions on LSU football, which is great. But I want you to really think about, okay, let's go to Mo Funky, or excuse me, not Mo Funky, Mikey. Who will be our starting safeties, and who do you see playing the nickel? All right, so let's go straight to Mo Funky. Starting safeties next year. Obviously, Todd Harris is going to be the leader in the clubhouse, and you're going to have to unseat that guy who has been through injuries. Todd Harris played well. He played well the second part of the season. Yeah, I can't really put any of the deep passes versus Bama on him. Simply put, it was Jekyll and Hyde. First part of the season, he was horrible, but then he just got better. He just stuck in there. So I would say Todd Harris is one of the starting safeties, and then the other starting safety is really up for grabs. Jordan Tolles could take that role. You could see one of these corners eventually move over. Mo Hampton could be in one of those roles. But Derek Davis Jr. is enrolled, and something about Derek Davis is that, his tape looks really good. He really does. As many of you know, if you know me, if you know my view of watching high school tape, there's very few players that just scream at me All-American. There's some things about Derek Davis's game that will get better when he gets to LSU, but he's going to be in the mix. He's really going to be in the mix. So I'm going to go with right now. I'm going to go Todd Harris and Jordan Tolles as the starting safeties. But there's snaps to be had. Sage Ryan could easily win one of those jobs. So we'll see. Dwight McGlothern could move over and eventually be the free safety guy. There are so many different things you can do. And obviously Corey Raymond's going to go through that. Now, the starting nickel gets a little fascinating. So, the hot pick is Sage Ryan, because that is what Nick Saban was recruiting him to be. He was recruiting Sage Ryan to be Xavier McKinney. And as many of you know, Xavier McKinney ate our lunch. If there was one player in Alabama's defense that gave LSU fits, it was number 15. That dude was a monster. So they were getting Sage Ryan to eventually come play that role for them. And that's how the greatest defensive mind, or the greatest coach in college football history, viewed him. So that was just rumored. Obviously, he could play anywhere. So Sage Ryan is the sexy pick to play the nickel. The most experienced pick is everybody's favorite player, Cordell Flott. So, I'm going to throw it out to you. How would you guys feel about Cordell Flott starting at the nickel next year? I want your honest opinion. Who would you be happy with Cordell Flott as the starting nickel? Because remember, that is a very hard position to play. Okay? So if you want Sage Ryan to play that role, well, he's not in football school now. He's not in, at least I don't think he is. I don't think he's enrolled right now. That's a hard position to just come in and just start. So my pick to start at the nickel is Jay Ward. He's the best player. Jay Ward, I can also see playing free safety. I really do like his game a lot. He's mentally strong. Also, his play versus Arkansas should not be undersold. He made the 2 game-winning plays for us to win that game. So, take the Florida game, for instance. Cordell Flott got ejected for targeting. When he was ejected, the LSU defense got better. So to answer the super chat, Mikey, I appreciate your super chat. I'm going to go the starting corners, Derek Stingley and Elias Ricks. I don't think a single one of you would disagree with that. Those two are definitely in there. Then Jay Ward at the nickel. Then Todd Harris and Jordan Tolles as your deep safeties. Derek Davis could easily win one of those jobs. And that could be another thing, Carvis. Jay Ward and Flott, bench them. let them work their way back into the starting lineup. But Cordell Flott was not good this year. And you guys know how I am about criticizing players. Chance to win games.
Are y'all ready?
Are we ready for Bug? Come on, Bug. Do you want to go OUT first?
No, I'll let her come over there.
Let's go to the super chat. But let me get the super chat in real quick. What did you think of our guys in the Senior Bowl? Okay, that's a question. Rye. Let's go to your question immediately. So, Senior Bowl, Jacoby Stevens made the best play this week at the Senior Bowl on defense, was the interception of Mac Jones. I don't know if you guys saw that. It was ridiculous. There's only so much you could take away from a Senior Bowl. So, obviously, I think Jacoby, if they finally figure out that he's a linebacker, is going to work out pretty well in the NFL. I really do. Racey McMath is a special teamer, bottom line. But of the three, Jabril Cox obviously is the best pro prospect, simply because he is a monster.
I'll hold her.
Come on.
I'll hold her.
All right, everyone, say hi to Bug. She just slept all day today. Bug.
Miss Debbie.
There's Debbie.
There's Arik.
Yeah, Eric, that pick was crazy.
Would someone get Boog a number 7, whatever?
Does anyone want to make Booger a number 7 jersey? There she is right there. Does she have some cremette? She's been eating.
Yeah,
look at all that cremette.
She's been eating.
Look at all that. Look at that. Look at you, Bug. You can't eat dinner without me. We're having salmon tonight?
No. Remember, they didn't have it.
Oh, they didn't have any salmon?
I'm having tofu.
Oh, you're having tofu?
Mm-hmm.
What am I having?
Tuna steak.
Tuna steaks! Let's go! I hope Elias gets number 7. Bug number 7. So, to answer the Senior Bowl question.
I'm going to wipe your face, baby.
We'll bring her back in a second.
I'm going to go let her out, guys.
Go let her out.
Come on, Mama. Come on. And then you get your wet.
Tuna steaks. Okay, so to answer the Senior Bowl question, so, Ryan, I'm glad you brought this up. I like it when someone super chats a new topic. I love it. So, Jabril Cox really helped himself out. He's one of those guys where if you're not having to tackle running backs at full speed, that's Jabril Cox's biggest problem, is he can be a wimpy tackler. Okay? He could be horrible between the box or in between the hashes, but everything else, coverage, pick six, big playability, I think there could be a team that fall in love with him and pick him in the first round, the same way that teams fell in love with Patrick Queen late in the process. So, he's very interesting. Jacoby Stevens, there's just so much, I think NFL evaluators are going through the same thing right now. Why did he regress so much? Is he fast enough to play at the NFL level? Obviously, he's mentally strong enough. He is also a really good special teamer. Now, a lot of you might not remember this, but his true freshman year, he had the key block for DJ Chark's punt return touchdown that won the game versus Auburn. And that showed you that he is a team-first guy. Don't have to worry about him off the field. He's going to clock in, clock out, blue lunch pail, whatever cliche you want to use. So I think he's a 4th, 5th round pick. Racey McMath is going to be a 7th rounder or undrafted free agent. I think he has come to terms that he's going to have to take the Russell Shepard approach to his career. Be so valuable on special teams to where you cannot waste a roster spot and give it to someone else and not give it to Racing McMath. And Racing McMath, as a lot of you know, is an elite special teamer, in particular on punt coverage units. So yeah, I think all three of them had good Senior Bowls. I think the narrative shifted the most for Jacoby. I think Jacoby helped himself out the most. I really do. Ironically, it was Cam Sample, the defensive end out of Tulane, that really boosted his stock up the most. He was a defensive MVP today, if I remember correctly, and he was voted practice week MVP. It is rare. It's more important that you win the practice week MVP than the game MVP. But if you do both, that lets you know that guy is for real. So he did the most for himself. Carvis makes a good point here. Russell Gage, if you work your tail off so much on special teams, there comes a point where you're going to start getting some snaps at wide receiver. Even Russell Shepard worked his way into being a wide receiver. And I'm a Russell Shepard nerd. I bought his rookie card, his auto rookie card. It was only $10. I was shocked. I was like, this means the world to me. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. So, Rai, please respond. Hopefully I answered your question. I know Boog wanted to crash the party for a second. You know what, William? It's a good point. Russell Shepard got out of the league, and he immediately started his own waste management business, and it is booming in Houston. Now, our resident Houstonians in the chat aren't here tonight, Cliff and James. So, yeah, and Rai, you bring up a good point as well, going back to your super chat. We tend to forget about our pro Tigers. If I do video, and this has always been the case, when I do videos on players in the pros, no one watches. So a lot of people just lose interest. And I get it because you're not playing for LSU anymore. But, I think it's important to keep up with your pro Tigers. There's so many interesting stories, especially with Russell Shepard. I think Russell Shepard is a story that should be taught to every five-star recruit, because here's a five-star recruit who was labeled as a quarterback. Well, we never got to see him play quarterback. We never really saw him work out the way we thought he would work out. Then he completely redefined himself. And I knew Russell fairly well in college. He was always a very humble dude. And he did not need to be that way. He was hype. And what he did was he quickly realized that the one way he was going to last in the NFL is just be a role player, not be the guy, be someone that people like to be around. And then immediately, instead of just resting on the millions of dollars she's made in the NFL, picked up a business. Now, it wasn't a fancy business. He didn't start an entertainment company. He didn't start a car dealership or anything like that. He started a business that is a need, okay? A waste management business. In other words, those plastic toilets that you have to use at Voodoo Fest, that's what he does. I watched it, Shep Boys Waste Management, and that redefinition, him doing something that is a need in society, kind of like how he was in the NFL. You need special teamers. Someone's got to do it. So that could be a good case study for these five-star recruits that don't get it their way. That when you get to college, you might realize, well, I'm actually not a five-star recruit. I'm just a role player. And a lot of people can't redefine themselves and become that. And that is something you got to give Jacoby Stevens a lot of credit for. Okay? Jacoby Stevens was not the starter as a true freshman. It was Grant Delpit, and they were in the same recruiting class. Okay? And Jacoby Stevens came all the way from Tennessee to LSU, made himself valuable as a special teamer. And then it wasn't until his junior season he became the player he is now. And, there's a famous story about him and Joe Burrow getting in a fight at practice or an argument or whatever. A lot of kids can't do that. A lot of kids cannot humble themselves. And, and that's not just a new age thing. It's a lot of 5-star recruits who can't humble themselves. So, Rai, I'm glad you brought that up. I really am. And that's a good point too, Mikey. Mikey's well. They moved into wide receiver. Could you imagine LSU now, how deep we are wide receiver? Moving a defensive back to wide receiver. Could you imagine that now? It's crazy. So Jacoby is a real Tiger through and through, and Russell is too. Let's see. Oh, did someone call Russell Shepard a bust? He was not a bust. He won us a lot of games. He was not a bust. Nor was Ryan Perlew. Ryan Perlew was also not a bust. I hate it when people call him a bust at LSU. He was a bust based on what we thought he would be. But, we don't win the championship in 2011 unless Ryan Perlew is there. We just don't. Campbell, that's a good point about Derek Davis. Will we see the same situation between Derek Davis and Sage Ryan? That's a good point, Carvis. And, it could make a lot of sense because, look, if you go by the little bit of what we know about Derek Davis and Sage Ryan, if you both look at what they did as a safety in high school, there really isn't that much difference. But Sage Ryan obviously has a higher ceiling because he's a freak of nature athlete. So, yeah, you very well could see it. Players develop differently. For instance, what we know now about Lyle Collins is obviously, he was a monster. He was incredible at LSU. He exceeded our expectations, but even he sat the bench as a true freshman. So, it's tough. And sometimes, and I really do think this, sometimes I think true freshmen that are ready to play as true freshmen, it's not always smart to start them. It's not. It's smart to let them sit the bench because not only does it help you learn, but it does humble you. It does humble you to sit the bench. And I've been thinking about that with Arik Gilbert a lot lately because, Arik Gilbert walked in, single-digit number, immediate starter. You're the guy. He didn't have to work for anything. It was, and rightfully so. He's a transcendent talent. He's the best tight end on the roster. But there is something to be said in life when you work for something. What about Mason Smith? Well, yeah, the good thing about Mason Smith is that he won't start next year immediately. It just won't happen. There's too many experienced guys in front of him. And I think that's actually a good thing. I think you slowly work them in. I really do think so. Oh, okay. I got you. LSU was in a crappy position, unique kind of situation. Now don't slam it. No, I'm not slamming. Or are you Simeon? Are you referencing Perlew? I don't know. No, I'm not, and I'm not slamming Arik Gilbert at all. But there is a discussion regarding that. Ask yourself this question: if something was given to you in your life without really having to work for it, it's one of those things. Like you don't appreciate something unless you actually work for it. Have you ever noticed meals that you cook yourself at home, always, and it's actually turns out to be good. There's a metaphysical connection to actually, doing it yourself, working for that thing. That's just my experience. It could be different for you guys. But, Mason Smith is obviously, I believe the hype. I really do. Normally I like to temper it just a little bit. I didn't do that with Elias Ricks last year, and I'm not going to do it with Mason Smith. Mason Smith pops off. I mean, he's a super athlete with the super work ethic. And, if you go look at him at Terrebonne and watch him, they didn't play him head up nose in their 3-man front. They played him 5 technique defensive end head up on the tackle, and he could cover some ground. Now, obviously, his body's not going to look the same. I think they're going to try and tighten him up a bit. That's what I've been told. But him and his current ability and space now, I think he could play right away. I really do. We still got Joseph Evans and Eric Taylor as well. You're right. And I was doing some research on Joseph Evans earlier today. Out of Haynesville, nationally ranked prospect number 666, and I was like, why? If I was nationally ranked prospect number 666, I'd rather just be a 2-star. I'm heebie-jeebie about that. But anyway, Joseph Evans is very interesting. I think they moved him to the other side of the ball. And I'm doing a Will Campbell piece about this now because LSU's had so many whiffs on the offensive line. Yeah, John, I heard similar things as well, but it's just one of those things. That's something. And I had a player, and I won't share who this is, but I remember I lived in West Campus apartments where a lot of players live on campus, and there was a player who was benched and eventually became a starter, and he told me this. One of the best things being benched as a true freshman, that when you don't have to worry about playing, it allows you to focus on because think about the weight on your shoulders of being a true freshman, having to play a lot right away while your whole life is changing. You're not around your parents. You're not around your friends. You have to get through a new routine of your life. And having that first year where you're learning not only about where you live, not only learning a new routine, but for those that went to college, now this was my experience, you actually become a different person. You're changing. You're learning more about yourself. Your philosophies are changing. Your views on life are changing. And having that first year to gather yourself, this is something really profound. And, looking back in hindsight, knowing what we know about Ja'Marr Chase, let's take Ja'Marr Chase, for instance. Knowing what we know now is that he is transcendently talented. And if you watch his true freshman, the touchdown where he leaped in the air against Southeastern, and then he had the crazy touchdown in the bowl game against UCF. And what we know now about Ja'Marr Chase makes this go, well, how did he not play so much as a true freshman? And even Ja'Marr said in an interview that he said he was still finding himself. He was still learning. He was changing up some aspects of his game. So having that first year, and Terrace the same way, having that first year is so important. It is so important to learn. So that's why, like with Mason Smith, do I think Mason Smith is a better defensive tackle than anyone on LSU's team right now? I actually do. I do. I think right now he's better than any of them. But I don't think it would be wise to just start him, if you get what I'm saying. Okay, Michael. So this is exactly what I've been researching today. So why aren't we getting any O linemen though? I don't want to hear the excuse of none in Louisiana. Well, let's address that. Okay, so do you guys want me to talk about this? Because I'm putting together a piece that's going to air on Monday, and a lot of you are not Monday. It might be a little bit later in the week. It depends on the news cycle. But do you guys want to talk offensive line? Because I know, we were talking earlier, who wants to do just 20 minutes on LSU defensive backs? So if you want to talk about it now, I'm open to talking about offensive linemen now. And obviously, if you want to super chat any questions, if you guys want to talk more about the Senior Bowl, like Rai, you could super chat. But if you guys want to talk offensive line, I'd like to. Let's see what Mark is. I agree in principle. I do think we need mixed levels, though. We need to in one NFL guy and two okay guys. Yeah, I agree, Marcus. I do. That's part of what made Alabama so special that, Mac Jones didn't transfer. He just stuck it out. Carver says a good point, too. Is James Craig the right guy to develop these offensive linemen? So, let me pull this up because I actually do have it in my notes app right here. So, I want to go through a couple of guys. So, let's take a look at the... So, obviously, a lot of you know. Let me put this over here, and let me... All right. Okay. So let's first discuss this regarding the offensive lineman. And Marcus makes, a very important point. Damian Lewis and Lloyd Cushenberry started every game as a rookie in the NFL. They were both good. So let's discuss the first aspect of this. Recruiting the elite offensive lineman. Well, the bottom line is LSU is mostly comprised of guys from the state of Louisiana, right? So even the 2017 national championship team, you had important out-of-state guys, obviously Joey B being the biggest, but most of the guys on the team that were the fulcrum of the team were guys from Louisiana. So oftentimes when you say position X isn't working out, well, that often coincides with the players from the state of Louisiana not being all that good. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull this up. And what I did was for the last 5 years in the state of Louisiana, I went and looked at the 5 best offensive linemen in each and every state. Okay? So in 2017, LSU had an amazing offensive line class, but they were all from out of state, which is fine. It was Sadiq Charles, Austin Deculus, Lloyd Cushenberry was 2016, and another name that slips my mind. But in 2017, in the state of Louisiana, of the 5 best offensive linemen, 2 of them were good. Adrian Ely went to Oklahoma. He's from Gonzales, Louisiana. We'll get back to that in a moment. And Zach Tom was from Catholic High in Baton Rouge. He turned out to be a really good starter at Wake Forest. But if you look, long story short, the offensive linemen in the state of Louisiana have all been bust. They've all been bust. Okay? So in 2018, the best offensive lineman LSU got in that class from the state of Louisiana was Dale Rosenthal, but he was a defensive tackle. So the next highest offensive lineman in the state of Louisiana was Cameron Wire, who looks to be pretty good. But then you have guys that went to other Division I schools and they were bust there. And in 2019, it is bust central. Cardell Thomas, state of Louisiana, could he start next year? I don't know. Then Ray Parker, who I don't know if you guys keep up with the news cycle, is someone I don't want to talk a whole lot about because he did something that really pissed me off this week. So Ray Parker out of Ruston, a bust. Thomas Perry out of Lafayette, Louisiana, still on the roster. I've never really heard him jockeying for playing time. We'll see. And then Joseph Evans, who was a defensive tackle. Now, is he an offensive line? I don't know. Dylan Rathke out of Baton Rouge went to Arkansas. He's yet to see the field. Matthew Anderson, another 3-star offensive lineman from the state of Louisiana, went to Nebraska. He hasn't played yet. The best offensive lineman in the state of Louisiana was a guy by the name of Osiris Torrance, and he is a superstar at UL Lafayette. Like, he really is a superstar. Pro Football Focus thinks he's going to get drafted next year. So, if you wonder, and I was answering Michael's question, the offensive linemen in the state of Louisiana have not been good. They've simply not been good. Okay, in 2016 was an amazing year. Let me pull this up again. In 2016, all right, let me go through these names really quickly. 2016 was Donovan Campbell. I don't know what happened, but he decided before the season to transfer to Louisiana Tech. He dominated at Louisiana Tech, so good that he rose on NFL draft boards and then just quit. Willie Allen transferred from LSU, dominated at Louisiana Tech. Then he transferred again, and now he's at Michigan. Elton Hollins was the 3rd highest ranked offensive lineman in the class of 2016. Pretty good starter at TCU. Then Colton Prater ended up being the best offensive lineman in this class. Multiple year starter at Texas A&M. And then you get to Lloyd Cushenberry. Well, Prater and Cushenberry are about the same. Lloyd Cushenberry was the next highest rated offensive lineman. And then in 2015, and then you go down to 2014. 2014 was arguably the best year Louisiana offensive lineman. That was Garrett Brumfield, Cam Robinson, Will Clapp. That was an amazing year. So the issue may not be an LSU issue. It could just be that Louisiana hasn't had any good offensive linemen. And when guys in your own state aren't good, guess what? Your program more often than not is going to suck. Unless you're Alabama that gets the best players everywhere. But think about that. In 2014, LSU missed the shiny can't-miss prospect in Cam Robinson. And Cam Robinson was a beast. He was a monster. But the next 2 highest-rated guys went to LSU, Will Clapp and Garrett Brumfield. And they were multiple-year starters that are in the NFL. And it's only 2 of them. That's the funny thing about this offensive line dearth over these past couple of years. You really only need 1 or 2 to hit because you're going to get some from out of state that are going to work out, like Austin Deculus and City Charles. But more often than not, you just need 1 or 2 of them in the state. But that's the thing. None of them have worked out. And you know what, Sports Talk Nolan? You make a good point. Missing out on Cam Robinson will forever hurt me. Why? That's my question. Why? Because we hit on everyone else. That was a great class. 2014 class. Guess what? That was arguably the strongest Louisiana crop of talent ever. Okay? Let me make sure that's 2014. Make sure. Yeah, Cam Robinson was 2014. So 2014 was Leonard Fournette, Trey Quinn, Malachi Dupree, Speedy Noel. I mean, that was a crazy class. I mean, it was strong everywhere. So it was okay that we missed out on Cam Robinson, but we got the other 2 guys. The problem with the LSU offensive line over the past couple of years is that none of these Louisiana guys can play, or they haven't proven that they could play. So, Cam Robinson was a monster. He was excellent. Very good player at Alabama. And Alan, that's the narrative. That's the funny thing. Outside of quarterback, there is no position on the field that rotates less than your offensive line. Your offensive line never rotates out. So you really just need a few. You really just need a few to hit. You need one in basically every class to hit. So we'll see. Now look, we've yet to see Marcus Dummerville really play. Marlon Martinez, Xavier Hill, yet to see them play. Gary Dellinger might walk in day one and say, look, I'm Siren freaking Black. You're going to start me day one, and I'm going to start the next 4 years, and you don't have to worry about a thing. I hope that's the case. Hopefully Will Campbell's that guy, but we have to wait. Malfunky Saban lost his offensive line coach to Texas, where he gets his lineman from. That will hurt him. Maybe. J.C. Latham is going to be a superstar. I think he's really special. The Brockermeyer brothers are a lot of hype. I think there's still some work to be done there. But they're the number one players at their positions, or top 5 players at their positions. And Alabama returns Evan Neal. And I said there's still going to be a good line next year. Yeah, Alan. I mean, think about all the offensive linemen LSU had. Now, obviously, Lyle was going to be a great player anywhere, but, Will Blackwell, T-Bob, all these guys, I mean, they were good players. Elliot Porter was a really good player. No one thought when Elliot Porter stepped on campus that he would be a really, good center, and he was a good center. Liam Shanahan, he got so freaking good at the end of the year. I mean, he really did. And you got to keep in mind with Liam, and I brought this up a few times on streams, but, how many bad snaps did you see this year? Not many. And it was clear that he was going to be the starting center, but you cannot practice snapping the football in different weather conditions. Liam Shanahan not had in 3 different games this year, the weather changed midway through. No bad snaps. Arkansas, the weather changed dramatically. It was dry, then really wet. In Florida, you couldn't see anyone with that fog. And then Ole Miss was a torrential downpour. And that was with 2 true freshman quarterbacks that he thought he was never going to play with. And his blocking got a lot better. Liam Shanahan versus Alabama, he was my highest graded offensive player. He was really good. He was really good in that game. So, if you were to, blindfold me or take their jersey numbers off, Liam Shanahan at the end of the year was every bit as good, if not better, than Ethan Posick, who is still starting in the NFL. So look, now I would be lying to you if I said Liam Shanahan is special. He's not special. He's really good, though. He's really good. And on top of that, let's go back to what I was talking about earlier. In his first year as a transfer, Liam Shanahan had to speak to the media every week. Oh, it's no big deal. Really? It's a big deal. It's a big deal. You're speaking on behalf of a locker room of guys you just met months ago. A lot of guys who played and or were backups on a national championship team each and every week. Trust me, it's a lot different when you're doing a Zoom call with all these reporters, and you got to make sure you say something that's not going to get clipped off and sent off to 1,000 different people. So he's a really good player. And, so what's SPH talking about? Let's see. Can I ask y'all a random question? Okay, we're an hour and a half into this. Let's see. What's up, Chad? You know what, Carvis? I don't ever want to see an offensive lineman with an overtime channel. I was part of it. These clips of him going viral of killing people that are wearing underwear. There's so much more to offensive line play. And look, that injury could be a lot worse. The injury he suffered his freshman year, I think it has more to do with that than anything. But I could not, and I mentioned this in a few videos. God, there's so many questions about Cardell Thomas. And the simple truth is that as excited as I am about Will Campbell, and Will Campbell is coming at a time where LSU really needs him, the most important trait you can have as an offensive lineman, and Will Blackwell told me this one time, is how well do you get along with the other guys on your line? So if you're an offensive lineman and you already have a viral following of what you do in one-on-one drills and you're hyped up, it kind of goes against the number one tenet of offensive line play. How good are you with all the other guys? Kendall, that's a good point. Ed Ingram is the only guy that can move bodies. That's true, but I'm telling you, go look at the John Emery touchdown run. Okay, a lot of us have seen it. The John Emery touchdown run versus Alabama. I did a full film breakdown, 10 minutes of everybody's responsibility on the play. The only guy who didn't do his job and got away with the blatant hold on Dylan Moses was Chasen Hines. And I don't mean to pick on Chasen Hines, but against Florida and against Alabama and against Texas A&M, it was tough for me to find positive plays or even serviceable plays from Chasen Hines. And I was shocked that LSU did not bench him. And this is just honest football analysis. It was to the point where we had no chance of doing anything with him on the field. And I like Chasen Hines, but he is a defensive tackle that converted to offensive guard in large part for what I was talking about a minute ago. The in-state crop has not been there. He was a major liability. So yeah, on the long John Emery run, he had the easiest block on the play. All he had to do was get in front of Dylan Moses and slow him down. But he whiffed and then held him, and it wasn't called. And I'm glad it wasn't called because John Emery really needed that run for his confidence. So Liam Shanahan on that play had the toughest block, and he pancaked this guy. Legit, put his butt on the floor. And if you want to see the film study, I think the link's down below. You can find it. And this was, and Marcus was pointing this out, this was Liam Shanahan, 2-3-star recruit, putting a Bama defensive line. I don't remember if it was Barmore or Tim Smith or whoever. But, that's what I'm saying. Shanahan was doing some NFL type of stuff. And here's the thing. Chasen Hines does have the potential. But to me, it takes a lot for me to say this guy needs to be benched. Okay? I believe you should be benched if you are doing something that is actively hurting your team's chances to win. I know it sounds oversimplified, but it's true. And I don't like benching offensive linemen because, as I mentioned, the cohesion is so important. But there comes a time and place where you need to put new guys into the game. So, for instance, this would be how I would start the offensive line next year. Cody, you asked me about Garrett Dillinger. Obviously, he's not going to play this year. Year 2 is going to be his big year. So we'll see. We'll see. When I watched him, he looked good. He looked really good. But this is my. I'll share this. If I ever see an LSU player that has high school tape that just blows me away to the point where I'm like, okay, that guy's going to be awesome, I'll let you know. Right? So Garrett Dillinger's high school tape is really good, but it's not he started as a true freshman good. Not many offensive linemen have that, though. There's not many J.C. Lathams walking around. But I honestly think this would be a good offensive line next year. Dare back at left tackle. I think the non-negotiables are Ed Ingram at left guard and Liam at center. I think those are the non-negotiables. I think the other 3 spots are up for grabs. I would roll with Dare at left tackle. Played through a lot of injury. He got hurt first game against Mississippi State. But like we said earlier, availability is your best ability. Dare Rosenthal has had some stuff off the field. And Ed Orgeron loves him some Dare Rosenthal. And I'm telling you, one thing Ed Orgeron does is he is really, really good with backing a player. He really is. Your left tackle's got to be there. Your left tackle has got to be there, especially if Myles Brennan is your starter next year. So I would like Dare at left tackle. So we go Dare, then Ed, then Liam, and then at right guard, I would put Cam Wire at right guard. And then at right tackle, I would roll back out Deculus. Now, Carvis made this point, I think a few months ago, and it's a good outside the box point. Maybe knock Deculus into right guard, and then it's the Marcus Dummerville show. You're the 4-star offensive lineman. You came from one of the, if not the most prestigious high school in Florida, St. Thomas Aquinas. Lots of NFL guys have gone through those locker rooms. So put Deculus at right guard, and then Dummerville could be your guy at right tackle. So Carver says, Wire, Ingram, Shanahan, Deculus, Dare. Oh, so you think put Cam at left tackle. I like it. Lots of good offensive linemen came from Gonzalez, Adrian Ely. That's a good lineup. Chad, I have, and he's special. He's very quick. Mean streak, finishes blocks. He's good. Will's pretty good. Dummerville could win a starting spot this year. This could be one of those Jamar Chase types of things where, he comes in and he just beats out everyone. He just kills everybody on the practice field. It could be. The lookout block. What's the lookout block? Mo Funky thinks Deculus would be better at guard. SPH. Oh, God. So would y'all like that line? All right, let's go with Carvis's line. Carvis says Cam Wire at left tackle. I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with that if Max is the starter because he's left-handed. Cam at left tackle, left guard, Ed, Shanahan, and then and then Deculus, and then Dare at right tackle. I'm fine with that. And Holler, look. Oh, so the blindside block. Oh, no. Oh, a whiff. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But I'm telling, and I told, so I reached out to an offensive lineman that played at the Division I level. He didn't play for LSU. So I did the Texas A&M film study, and I sent him the film study. And I've not talked to this guy in forever. And he didn't play. He didn't end up doing anything, but he was a decent player. So I said, look, I want you to look at the right guard for LSU and let me know what you think. And he told me, Carter, it was criminal that they did not bench him. Because here's what I thought when the Texas A&M game happened. And I hated doing the play-by-play film study because it was just so painful to watch Chasen Hines in that game. He was legit getting he was getting bludgeoned. He was getting beat down. The same way Dustin Poirier was beating into Conor McGregor's face, right? So you got to stop the fight, right? You got to stop it. It's for the betterment of everyone. But before that, it was the calf kicks for those that watched the fight. And that's how I felt watching the Texas A&M game. When it wasn't just him getting blown back, it was also, just these little things starting to add up, and it was every single play. And I was like, God, what is this? So I say that because LSU did the same thing on the opposite side of the ball as well. They did the same thing. I would have benched Cordell Flott. I would have benched him. Now, as many of you know, I'm a big fan of Chasen Hines and Cordell Flott because I'm a big fan of every LSU football player that plays hard. I'm a big fan of every LSU football player that doesn't get in trouble off the field, that does all the right things, that are good in the locker room. If you do those things, if you do the things you can control well, you're going to help out a team. But those two struggled so much. They struggled so much that it was hurting them. It was hurting them. Because sometimes when you struggle, the best thing you can do is get benched and see the game from the sideline. Allen says McLaughlin was an instant improvement over Flott. Good point. And Dwight had his moments in that Florida game. But, this was a question that, I kept getting. Why didn't we play Dwight McLaughlin earlier? The one touchdown he gave up in that game, he was pushed off. So, and this is going to be a good question for, and here's the thing, Chasen Hines and Cordell Flott, I hope they prove me wrong next year, or I hope they prove all of us wrong, because a lot of you felt this way. I couldn't tell you how many emails I got after the Texas A&M film study from people that aren't even fans of the Aggies or LSU. It was like, wait, how are they not seeing this? How are they not seeing these issues? So we'll see. I hope not, Lewis. I hope he hangs around. He was a part of the championship team. Look, Cordell Flott played a lot in the national championship game. That experience counts for something. But Bruce, every player is essentially being redshirted at all. Even if you played the 4 or less games, count for anyone. Paris wants to talk running backs. Okay. Let's see. Do you guys want to move on to running backs? Paris, if you super chat, we automatically go to running backs. Let's see. So once again, super chat, Venmo, Cash App, wide open for what you guys want to talk about. There's still 140 of you in here. I don't mind going for a little bit longer because we are doing tuna steaks tonight, and you guys don't want a tuna steak night. I thought it was going to be salmon night because I was excited for salmon night because I had tuna steaks a few times this week. I'm fine. They were at the same at the markets. I live in a small town. And look, I know Arik was excited about salmon night as well. Who isn't excited about salmon night? You know, sometimes salmon could be cooked so well that it's better than steak. I'm dead serious. And I know that's dangerous to say in the South. Now, Louisiana, it's not as dangerous to say that. But if you're in one of these other southern states, they're like, steak is better than the air you breathe. That's layman salmon. Once again, I'm calling 140 of you in here and I only have 67 thumbs up. You know what? Really? Bruce says, I heard Pelini refused to play White, even though, you know what, Bruce, when I first read that, I thought you were talking about Devin White. I was like, what? Really? That would be a Bo Pelini move, though. Watch Josh White be as good as Devin White, and Pelini look like an idiot for not playing him. Dude, those tuna steaks with all that mercury. That mercury. Ah, man. Let's see. Try some redfish or speckled trout. Lawrence, you got to understand, not everyone can live in Louisiana like you and get and have that on for a dime. You know, you can go to Rouse's and get a better piece of fish. Their worst piece of fish, and I like Rouse's when I lived down there, but you can go to Rouse's. Their worst piece of fish is going to be the best piece of fish in most areas of the country. Yeah, what is the deal with Philip Webb? I'm very interested. You know, there's all these guys you never see play, and you don't ever really know if they're any good until you actually play them. So Philip Webb didn't play, Josh White didn't play, Antoine Sampa didn't play. So is the likelihood that all three of them weren't ready to where you don't play them at all? Really? What? What's up with that? And once again, I didn't think starting this channel, the number one question I would get would be player-related questions. What about Cardell Thomas? What about Eli Ricks? I thought it'd be more coach-related type of questions. But no, it's players. You guys care about, hey, why is it that? And a lot of it is, we just don't know. We just don't know. We simply do not know who's good or bad. We just don't know. You know what, Lewis? That was the kind of shocking thing when Philip Webb chose LSU. I agree with you. That's a good point, Marcus. No offseason. It makes some sense. Yeah, I could see that. You know what's going to be interesting is do Damon Clark coming back, does he keep the number 18 uniform? I think you have to, right? Kendall, I am still shocked that Clark had that bad of a season. And honestly, you know what? I think the season he had is more deserving of him wearing the number 18 uniform because he just looks so lost. And look, we all thought he was going to be a star. Some of it is scheme. Some of it is, the defensive linemen in front of him were being told to do something different than what they were supposed to do in a 3-4 and a 4-3. And a lot of times, he was taking on offensive linemen that were getting clean through to the second level. So, there was a lot of that, a lot of reacting too late. He didn't, and, we kind of took it for granted, but Jacob Phillips and Patrick Queen had such good chemistry. It doesn't seem like him and Jabril had much chemistry. Ojulari gave an interview saying Pelini always yelled at him, but when older guys who made mistakes. When did BJ say that? What interview was that? I'd like to see it, Bruce. Logan and Farrell have to improve. Yeah, they definitely regressed. But then again, they were asking him to do something new. Let's see what Zayden, you mean defensive lineman. You need a 4-5 and a defensive lineman. We haven't even talked QBs tonight. That's crazy, William. We hadn't even talked about, and I don't talk LSU basketball on here, but for those that had the LSU -3.5 ticket, which is part of the reason why I don't think I've gotten the super chats that I thought I was going to tonight, because a lot of you were holding an LSU -3.5 ticket, and you had a Scott Van Pelt bad beat tonight. Oh, man. Oh, T-Bob reported that about BJ? Yeah, it's crazy. Pelini, man, that is so weird. That's so weird. I don't know why. And BJ Ojulari, of all people. God, I love that kid. I really do. I think he's really good. I really do. Cliff, I was wondering where you were. But can I ask you a question, though? Did some of you oh, I thought, Marcus, you were saying that you bet that. Did any of you have LSU -3.5? I'm serious, because you guys know I don't talk LSU basketball that often. That doesn't like it. I just, it's better to just focus on LSU football. But did any of you have LSU -3.5? Because I feel horrible for you. Because I was thinking going into this, I was like, God, I lost some super chat money because freaking Will Wade doesn't know how to draw up a stupid inbound play. Oh, Quinn, you had it outright? Oh, man. I don't think I would have been bold enough to take LSU outright. God. And you guys know because this is also something else. I don't get this question a lot. Are you going to do LSU basketball stuff? No. But God, that loss was bad today. That was a bad loss for Will Wade. And, it shows when you have a coach like Chris Beard, who's a top 5, top 10 coach in college basketball now. Also, it pisses me off. Georgetown not being good in basketball gets me really angry. And seeing the kid, the McClung kid, used to be at Georgetown, and Georgetown sucks now. I grew up in that Allen Iverson era. That Georgetown meant a lot to me, and I lived in D.C. and I got to meet John Thompson once. Georgetown needs to be good in basketball. That's a program that's too cool to not be freaking good, and it sucks, right? And, it just sucks. Georgetown should not suck, and they need to fire Patrick Ewing if he can't get the job done. What's up, James? Our Houston guys, Cliff and James. I was shouting you guys out earlier in the chat about Houston. So, Quinn, I'm sorry. Now, if I know Quinn would have been super chatting like $500 if LSU had won outright, because that would have been your payout. I'm kidding. It wouldn't have been that. But really, though, that's my only college basketball hot take you're going to get on this channel. Georgetown needs to be good. College basketball is a better sport when Georgetown is good. James, I'm sorry. I know you're a Texans guy. Deshaun is gone. Quinn, you're a college student? Are you an LSU student? I lived in D.C. Let's see. I lived in D.C. the year the Saints won the Super Bowl, so 2009. I lived in D.C. And I lived in Columbia Heights with Cliff's cousins. I miss D.C. D.C.'s great. D.C. is an incredible city. Let's see. I'm going to get back to college football, though, because I saw the numbers going down. They're like, oh, he's going to talk about Georgetown basketball. If you go to the campus and you see the gym and see all the different things, well, I went to their summer league games, which were free, and you never knew which NBA guys would walk through there. But, you see the banners of all the things at Georgetown. It's just great. Oh, we were neighbors. That's good. So, official Friday. Carter, who do you want to start at QB? Okay. So, I'm going to do a video about this a few weeks from now when the news cycle really dies down. Okay? I think who needs to be the QB is the wrong question, right? Because sometimes your quarterback is only as good as the chemistry he has with everyone around him, okay? So determining who the right quarterback isn't as important to me as determining who is the best player at each and every position. All right. So the most important thing for LSU to have, if you go back to the 2019 LSU offense, we remember the 2019 LSU offense for having all these super duper players. But the one thing that unit had was cohesion. The same starters played every game. And what Joe Brady did when he came in, he quickly picked out who the best receivers were, him and Mickey Joseph. But what happened this year? Well, we were rotating receivers in and out every 2 seconds. We were rotating running backs in and out every 2 seconds. The unit, we needed to rotate more guys. The offensive line, we never rotated them. So the question isn't so much who the best quarterback is, who should be the guy. Because some of you are going to say Myles. Some of you are going to say Max. There's a smaller number of you that are going to say TJ. But LSU's most important question is, who are our best guys? And how could we get these best guys working together as much as we possibly can to develop the cohesion we need to have that we had in 2019? Let's go to James's super chat. So why do these so-called LSU fans want TJ to transfer so badly? Ridiculous. I'm from Louisiana. I'm a Saints fan. Okay, I'm sorry, James, for calling you a Texans fan. But, it sucks that they're running Deshaun Watson out of town. So I don't know. I don't know why everyone is saying, oh, TJ's going to transfer. TJ's going to transfer. I know there was something that happened with his mom. His mom said some quote or transferring or whatever. If he transfers, Someone's getting a pretty good starting quarterback. I think he's really good. I do think TJ's really good. Turnovers were bad. I don't expect true freshmen to make turnovers. Threw the football late a lot. I don't expect a true freshman to do that. South Carolina game was great. He had 2 weeks to prepare. Arkansas game was great. He had a lot of time to prepare. Auburn game, obviously 2 horrible mistakes. Defense didn't help out. Then the Alabama game was meh. There was some good and some bad. And then the Texas A&M game, which was just bad. So, obviously, I don't want TJ to transfer. I would love a Louisiana quarterback to be the quarterback. Max was better than TJ. I think that was pretty clear. Max wasn't so unbelievable that it automatically makes him the starting quarterback next year. It just, he was really good in his 2 starts. He was really good. He was better than TJ. But it would be pretty smart to keep TJ Finley around. It would be. As much depth as you can have at the quarterback position, the better. And I do agree with what Marcus says here. TJ has great potential, but he needs the most work at the things that take the longest. I agree. I do. And obviously, the thing that he needs to work on the most is the turnovers. Turnovers will lose you football games. Okay? A lot of you are Saints fans. Answer this question. Did the Saints lose a game or did the Buccaneers win the game a few weeks ago? Okay? The Saints lost that game. The Buccaneers didn't win it. The Saints, Drew Brees, with one of the most selfish quarterback performances I've ever seen, and I'm a Drew Brees fan, unbelievably selfish quarterback performance. Some of the throws he made were horrible. Played hero ball while he knew he was hurt. And guess what? The checkdowns to Alvin Kamara were there. When you turn the football over, you give your team no chance to win. It is rare you have a game like the Ole Miss game where you win the turnover margin and the game is still close the way LSU did, right? It's rare. It's rare. Did LSU win or did Florida lose? I think it was a mixed bag. I really do. Yeah, I think obviously Florida lost that game. When you throw a shoe, you give a team no chance. But, the Trask had horrible turnovers. And Florida did outgain LSU pretty badly. So, yeah, I would say more Florida lost that game than LSU won it. But LSU was basically playing their JV squad in all due seriousness. Florida let our JV squad beat them. And that's not a disrespect to the LSU players. That was legit their JV squad. There was a lot of guys playing that had not played at all during the season. So, yeah, I would say Florida more lost that game than LSU won it. That does not take away, though, that LSU, with a shell of the team, allowed Ed Orgeron and LSU to beat them in Gainesville. So, yeah. Exactly, Carvis. And honestly, I think about that a lot too. That was actually 2 plays before. But your thinking is right. He missed Michael Thomas wide open on a slant that would have won the game. So, yeah, I would say Florida more so lost the game. But Florida was playing with their best team in the playoff era, and LSU was playing with their worst team in the playoff era, and we still won. That's a good point, Lawrence. That's a good way to put it. And look, Florida fans, they got to live with this the rest of their lives. That they did not play Kyle Pitts that game. Okay? Now look, you guys know I'm honest. I bet Florida minus 23. I was like, God, we're not going to have Sting and we're not going to have Terrace, and we're not going to have Arik. It is shocking. That is, to this day, an all-time blunder loss by Florida. All-time blunder loss. It doesn't make any sense that they lost that game. Now, did LSU get some lucky breaks? Yeah, they got the doohickey interception, but LSU also had horrible breaks too. Both our starting running backs got hurt in that game. Both of them. You did, Marcus. You did. And, now Dan Mullen's got a lot of questions to answer regarding Florida. So they lost their Heisman quarterback. They lost their greatest offensive player, maybe since Tebow and Kyle Pitts. Kadarius Toney was the best wide receiver at the Senior Bowl this week. They lost him. They're also losing Ventrell Miller, their linebacker. I think he's gone. And Florida lost their offensive coordinator. Now, Dan Mullen calls the plays, but he will be without Brian Johnson, who's been with them for quite some time. And Brian Johnson has done something Dan Mullen hasn't done, which is beat Alabama. Now, full disclosure, Brian Johnson did that as the quarterback for Utah when he beat Nick Saban in the Sugar Bowl. I was at that game. But still, I'm selling Florida stock. Their recruiting's fine. It's just, I just don't think Dan Mullen is buttoned up enough to win a national championship. You could say a lot of things about Ed Orgeron, and I've been very critical about Ed Orgeron. But he recruits at a high level, and when his teams play, oftentimes they don't commit penalties that lose you football games. They just don't. And LSU football teams don't commit a lot of turnovers. Remember, when Ed Orgeron had Danny Etling as his quarterback, LSU set an NCAA record committing only 8 turnovers. I believe that was Danny Etling's last year in 2017. They only had 8 turnovers. So, you could say whatever about Ed Orgeron. His teams, for the most part, are pretty disciplined when it comes to penalties and turnovers. So, Dan Mullen's the opposite. Florida will have penalties. They'll have turnovers. They'll have bonehead mistakes. Okay? Now, who's a more talented coach? Well, when it comes to play calling, Dan Mullen runs circles around everyone. But your head coach needs to be disciplined. What did Dan Mullen do after the halftime fight versus Missouri? Okay, I don't know if you guys saw this. There was a brawl halftime between Missouri and Florida. So Florida goes to the locker room. What does Dan Mullen do? He comes back out of the locker room and tries to fire the fans up. What? Really? It's that, people. It's that. You gotta have it all together. You know what, James? That's what I've read too. I'll talk about Arik Gilbert, but I'm done actually chasing. Well, is he taking classes? Is he in the portal? Is he doing magic tricks? I'll do the occasional video talking about Arik Gilbert. But yeah, early it didn't look like Arik Gilbert was coming back. Look, there's not many places you start right away, especially at a national championship level program like LSU. It just doesn't happen. It does not happen. Think about all the key players for Alabama's 2017 national championship. The players that had the game-winning pass and touchdown reception were who? It was Tua and Daronte. Both two of the greatest at their positions in the SEC. Neither one of them started. It's hard to start at a skilled position as a true freshman anywhere. And Arik Gilbert had that opportunity. And by going to a new school, you're essentially throwing that away, that experience. Are you going to go to Alabama? Are you going to beat out Jaleel Billingsley? I don't know. I don't know if SPH is still in here. He knows more about Alabama than I do, but, you're not beating out Jaleel Billingsley. He was a good player. Georgia's got good tight ends. So, obviously with Arik, as James points out, there's some off the field stuff that needs to get handled. The severity of those, I don't know. We don't know. So we'll see. He's the most, we were talking about earlier, Tyrann Mathieu is the most unique LSU football player I've ever seen. Arik Gilbert's the most unique recruit LSU's ever had. And in a lot of ways, he's the highest rated tight end ever. I don't know if there'll ever be a tight end like that. I mean, he's that much of a freak athlete. And LSU's never really been special at tight end. They just haven't. So yeah, it's kind of new for us. When that was when he committed to LSU, there's a famous story that LSU stopped practice to tell Ed Orgeron that kid committed. That's how big of a deal. I mean, that was, that showed the shift. That showed the Joe Burrow and Joe Brady effect. Because in past years, no way that kid's coming to LSU. Honey Badger was a 3-star. Yeah, I mean, some people called him a 3-star, some people were a 4-star, but overall he wasn't, huge. Do you think Peets and Mangus will get Kevin Falk to tighten up the running back rotation? Good question. And it only gets more complicated now that you got 2 running backs coming in that rose in the rankings. Corey Kiner has been rising in the rankings, which is kind of rare because when you commit early, your ranking theoretically doesn't move as much because there's just not as much buzz about you. But Corey Kiner rose in the minds of many, and LSU got another back in Armani Goodwin, and who knows what Logan Diggs is going to do on signing day. So you could have 3 scholarship backs coming in. Okay? What's the deal with Kevontre Bradford? Do we have an issue here off the field? I hope not. He's coming back. And then we have John Emery and Ty Davis Price. Okay? So that's it. Oh, wait. That's not it. The best running back versus Ole Miss was the 5th string back to start the year, Josh Williams. So what is that? That's 7 or 8 running backs. 6, 7, or 8 running backs. So Cliff makes a good question. Who's the best? Who is the best? We'll see. Oh, did he sign? Logan, did he sign with Notre Dame? I don't know. I'm not so familiar with this recruitment. I do know he went to Rummel, and Rummel. Those kids can play. Those kids can play. Who are all the Rummel Raiders? It's Coy Moore, Jamar Chase, Malachi Dupree. Rummel's got some ball players. Chad, that should be the answer. Marcel Brooks, I don't really care. To be honest, I just don't. We're fine at defensive end. Kendall says Emery, but he actually needs holes so he can break through. Oh, Malachi did go to John Curtis. Thank you. I know their colors are the same, the red, white, and blue. Thank you for correcting me on that. So is Rummel just Coy Moore and Jamar? Are there other Rummel Raiders that have played at LSU? Fulton, that's it. Okay. I was like, I was, someone was just sticking in the back of my mind. Side note, I think we criminally underrate Christian Fulton and his role on the 2019 team. The more I go back and watch LSU play, I'm like, God, Christian Fulton was freaking awesome. Christian Fulton was a freaking monster on the 2019 team. There was a play he made in the Clemson game that he doesn't get a lot of credit for, but it's too nerdy, technical to talk about on a live stream. But he did something pretty freaking special that saved the game for us. Stelz was a Rummel Raider too? Did not know that. Okay. You see, I thought that there was more. Paul said who's going to beat Bama. I think Bama loses 2 games next year. I mean, their return. I mean, I know, but God, number one, Steve Sarkisian is not as good of a is way better of a play caller than Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien is such a disaster. I mean, what? I know Saban's great, but goodness. And they did lose their best wide receiver ever. I just don't think Bama's receivers are nearly going to be as good as what they were. Bama's receiver room is legendary these past couple of years. I think Bama loses 2 games. But anyway, this is not a Bama chat. Yeah, Coy. So it's so the Rummel Raiders are Christian Fulton, Jamar Chase, Coy Moore, and Craig Stelz. That's pretty freaking good. Let's see. Once again, I'm getting a lot of questions here. Once again, if you have a question, super chat it. I'll go straight to your question immediately. Super chat or Venmo Cash App. It is on the, let's see. Oh, Matthew Stafford? Let's see what this is. Oh, that's nothing. Booty Chan. So my girlfriend, you guys can't hear. My girlfriend was in there singing that song. Let's get it crunk up all night. I don't know the lyrics. In this misery. Let's get it percolating while you're waiting. So just. Oh, Matthew Stafford to the Rams. That just happened. I should have bought those Matthew Stafford cards last week. They're just a little too expensive, but now they're going through the roof, especially now he's going to the Rams. That's wild. Rams. That is wild. That's good, man. I do. What's funny? I do have some cards, some Cooper Kupp cards that I bought for really cheap. Okay. Hopefully that skyrockets his value. Mary J. Blige. That's it, baby. I'm a huge Mary J. fan, but not weed. A lot of you accused me of being a narc last week because I said I never smoked a blunt in my life. And Eric was like, he's a cop. He's a cop. I am. What's the name of the cop movie where Samuel Jackson and The Rock die, and then it becomes Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg? I was thinking of that movie a while ago. Let's see. I'm making sure I didn't miss a super chat here. Wait, who's late? James, don't you accuse me of being late when you and Cliff, Yusha, about time, Yusha, forever LSU. What's up, Yusha? Yusha, I'm repping my Reds tonight, even though Yusha is working really hard for me to become a Lazio fan. Okay? Lazio is my number 2 soccer club. Full disclosure. Okay? But here's something that's crazy. Today in France, the club Marseille, okay, was smoke bombed by their fans because they suck. Okay? Now, I know LSU football, we care a lot, but we don't care so much that we would do something like that. So it's crazy. I mean, trust me, soccer fandom is just so next level. Lazio. But that's just so stupid. And nor do I condone what happened in Marseille. I can't even remember the last great Marseille players. All the great French players go play for PSG. And PSG says, forget it with the French guys. We're going to go get Neymar. But they do have Kylian Mbappe. Chad, thank you, man. Enjoy those tuna steaks. I appreciate you. Man City. Man City on their best run ever. 12 straight wins. Man City has never done that until today. Man City, Kevin De Bruyne. That's right, Marcus. The fans are just so ridiculous. Oh, they were hunting you? Dude, Marseille fans have always been wild. You were in there for a Lazio match? That is so crazy. French-Italian. I like that. Was it a friendly or was it Champions League? Matthew Langlois. I did a video on him earlier this week. As you guys know, I'm a Matthew Langlois homer. New Roads, Louisiana, Point Capee, 3K. We don't have, actually, we do have a few viewers in Point Capee Parish. Marcus, I got to come up to North Carolina, come hang out, man. Chewy, what's up? About time I heard from you. Cardisha, YouTube, Eric Clapton, and the Queen Mary J. It's live. Steve Gadd? Who does Steve Gadd drum? One of the best funk drummers ever. Yeah, we'll pull it up. Good hookah. Remember, this is a smoke-free channel. And like I brought up earlier with Tyrann Mathieu, could you imagine, I think he should have been able to play in 2012. I think it's stupid to kick a football player off for weed when weed is better for you than actually playing football. But, that's an existential. That's an existential debate. To each their own. Gadd is a session drummer. I don't know a whole lot about music. I full disclosure, I don't. Hookah with tobacco. No, certainly better. What's up, Kane? You've been quiet. Oh, Steely Dan. I'll tell you, Steely Dan. I worked with a guy that was a big Steely Dan fan. He doesn't have a lot of fans, but his fans are so hardcore. And that's something what I want to do at this channel. Just develop hardcore fans. I don't care, getting to be able to do this. The fact that, there's over 100 people in here, we're just chatting about LSU football is just great. I know, Chris. I cried. I'm not going to lie. I freaking cried. Just seeing the photos of him being, and it was weird. And Cliff and I actually shared this mutual friend. So someone leaked to me that Tyrann Mathieu was in some serious trouble before, the photos were released of him the whole thing was just so freaking sad. Dude, I cried. I was like, God dong. Because the 2011 team was such a high. And, it was different because, the 2003 team was great, but I was a little too young to really experience it. Then the 2007 team was a lot of fun because I was a freshman. But then the 2011 team was just so great because we were undefeated and we were challenging for the greatest team of all time. And Tyrann Mathieu was the face of all of that. And just a few months later, I had such high emotions. I was so emotionally attached to the Honey Badger because I was still in school when the 2011 team was happening. And, that was just so sad. It's crazy. Trey, what's up, dude? I cried, man. Exactly, Marcus. If Les Miles didn't eventually kick him off the team, he would have never been able to sit back and really evaluate yourself. Yeah, 2007, that was the 2-loss national championship team. The 2011 team will always be better than the 2007 team, right? Do we agree on this? The 2011 team is probably the greatest team of all time to not win the championship. Probably. Exactly. I agree with you, Marcus, in the long run. And Tyrann says the same thing as well. And also, Patrick Peterson played a huge role in getting him back on the field. 6, Yusha, 6. Ooh, Kane, that's a good point. 0-2 Miami. Ooh. 0-2 Miami versus 2011 LSU. They're actually very similar teams. Let's see. 0-2 Miami, the team that lost to Ohio State, probably had more raw talent than the 2011 team of LSU, all things considered. They probably had more raw talent, for being honest. So on a neutral field, I would probably have them a field goal favorite over 2011 LSU. But 2011 LSU beat better teams than 0-2 Miami. Should have stuck with Lee in the championship game. I would have gone to Lee in the championship game. I would not have started him. Considering, the difference in the game earlier in the year was Jordan Jefferson's ability to run. That was the only offense we really had in that game. But once that wasn't working, I would have swapped him out. And ironically, Les Miles obviously deserves a big role in not switching up the game plan. And a lot of that's on him. But there were some open throws in the second half that Jordan Jefferson blatantly missed. So all Alabama did, okay, they ran 2 deep safety. They did nothing on defense. They basically just sat back and I was on the field for this game. And I was in the press box and I was on the field after the game. So I talked to Courtney Upshaw, who's a defensive end. All right. And he told me this explicitly. And I still have all the interviews. He said, we didn't do anything on defense. We just stayed in our rush lanes. And all Nick Saban said was, okay, beat us. Just beat us. We're going to let you try and beat us. So all they did was run too high. And LSU did the right thing running versus 2 deep safety. They ran all verts, okay? And even then, Jordan Jefferson missed so many receivers because he couldn't Les Miles didn't coach him to do anything different. And there was a wide open pass to D'Angelo Peterson over the middle that would have resulted in a touchdown, and Jordan Jefferson just missed him. I don't know how. And then Odell dropped a ball. It was a tough catch that would have been a touchdown. I mean, it was just a disaster. Jordan Jefferson was built for the Georgia Tech option offense. True. But yeah, I would say 0-2 Miami versus 11 LSU. I would say Miami would be a slight favorite. Slight favorite. Not by much, though. Bomb. Let's see. Sean Taylor versus the Honey Badger. 2 icons right there. 0-2 Canes versus 11 LSU. All right, guys, we're 2.5 hours into this. Where are y'all watching from? I should have done this a little bit earlier. Where are we watching from tonight? Jamal, where are you watching from? I'm curious. Alan, Chris, I know where most of you are. Cliff's in Houston. Yusha's in Pennsylvania. Marcus is in North Carolina. Let's see. James is in H-Town as well. Brandon's in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. T-Town, a pretty good city. I like Birmingham better. We got some people in here wanting to talk John Emery. Ooh, Paris. We got a super chat. Let's see. Oh, Pierre, someone asked me this earlier on a super chat, but I will happily answer it for you again because you're giving me some money. I like that. Arlington, Texas, Philly's in the building. Oh, South Carolina. Yeah, damn. How did I say North Carolina? I'm sorry, Marcus. Trey's in Washington, Arik and Robbins, Air Force Base, Georgia. The safeties room, Paris, I'm going to go Todd Harris starting at one of the safeties, and the other safety, I'm going to roll with Jordan Tolles. I wouldn't count out McGlothern or Jay Ward eventually moving over to safety. Obviously, you have Derek Davis Jr. and Sage Ryan that are going to play some next year. And obviously, you want to talk the DB room, the corners, that's self-explanatory. Your outside corners. So some mixture of that. Joey in Alabama country. Kidding. Amy, Louisiana. What's up, man? So Joey, I'm interested, Joey, and I know you're new to the chat here. Joey, is Amite now an Alabama city? I don't know. I've actually never been to Amite, Louisiana. Man, I still think Mohampton can play. I do. I don't know what happened. So, Joey, I'm actually curious about that because I don't think we've had a viewer from Amite, which, Dwayne, thank you for the super chat. What would you like to talk about? Dwayne, this is your time, Dwayne. Thank you for supporting the channel. I appreciate it. Thank you. But I am curious because, Sofshire from Amite went to Alabama. And then, I remember Ross Dellinger's story about the barber in Amite, Louisiana, and so many LSU fans got so pissed off at that story because I don't know why, but it's interesting. Thank you, Dwayne. That is the best, man. Just donating and enjoying Dwayne, I appreciate you, man. And anyone that donates to the channel, your money helps me live my dream, which is just talking LSU football. I know it sounds cheesy. I never thought that this could be a possibility. I've done so much radio and stuff like that for free. And one night I'll do a live stream and share some of the things about my career. Yeah, Brandon, I hope so. When you bring in an NFL defensive backs coach to be your defensive coordinator, the one thing you hope for. Bug! Cliff, thank you so much. Jamal in Alabama. That's good. For Bug the dog, thank you guys so much. And I Lincoln, Alabama. Where is that in Alabama? I think Alabama gets a bad rap for a state because I think Bingham's a fine city. I agree, Marcus. It was time for Jacoby to move on. It really was. You know what, Brandon? I'm cautiously optimistic about the hires. Now, I do feel more comfortable about Jake Peetz and DJ Mangus simply because, it's two of them. And Mangus I've done some research on this. Mangus's job for the 2019 LSU team was to be the guy that processed a lot of information based on what defense were doing to LSU. So someone close to Steve Ensminger told me this bit of information that I found to be pretty interesting. And this was my biggest insider source info that I got that I thought was so interesting. The one thing that really, it didn't surprise him, but the one thing that is not said enough about the 2019 team is that defenses showed them completely new looks from what they had shown prior to film. So in other words, Clemson and Alabama threw so many different looks and unpredictable looks at LSU. So what DJ Mangus's job was on the 2019 team, from speaking to people that know more about this than I do, one of his big things was to help Brady and Ensminger learn what the defense was doing different than what they saw on film. So in other words, Mangus had a very important role. Okay. Roger in Mount Holly, Arkansas. What's up, man? Arkansas Tigers. Yeah. So that's why I feel a little bit more comfortable with that, because Mangus, in a way, was a play caller, but not really a play caller. Okay. His job was to decipher what the defense was doing and suggest new plays, right? So he didn't have this huge, unbelievable role. He wasn't Brady or Ensminger, but he played a critical role. That's why I sat him next in the booth next to Brady. It was a process of information. So, I'm a little bit more confident in that hire, even though they coach the more important side of the ball, which is the offensive side of the ball. I do like Daronte Jones. I do like the hire. I do. But it is one of those wait and see things. We legit have no idea what's going to happen to the defense. We don't. So we'll see. We got a Ricky Bobby quote. Man, so the way this works is, so eBay does like these auction things. And what happened was Matthew Stafford, I had a bunch of Matthew Stafford cards that I was looking at that were cheaper. But because the Matthew Stafford news just broke, all the prices just shot up because everyone immediately went to eBay and was like, oh, I got to get it, which is the worst time to buy a card. The worst time to buy a card is right now. Oh, Cliff, that's a good question. Can you talk about the importance of Austin Thomas back as a general manager? So, I know I shout him out, and I know he's a friend. I hadn't talked to him personally in a while, but I do still consider T-Bob Hebert a good friend of mine, right? T-Bob does a great job. I think he does do a great job on 104.5. And, everyone made a big deal about his interview last week with Ed Orgeron and all that, but he interviews a lot of people. So he did interview Austin Thomas this past week, and I listened to it. And Austin Thomas is a very progressive guy. He's a guy that is open to change. And he was talking about that in the interview. So maybe the most important thing for Austin Thomas isn't necessarily what he does for LSU, but his philosophies. His philosophies are that rosters are always changing. The sport has changed. And he said something really profound in the interview. Okay. Really profound. And Dwayne, I'll get to your question. Austin Thomas did something in the interview with T-Bob. And I was going to do a video about it, but I didn't think a lot of you would watch it. He said explicitly that the players have more power than they've ever had before. Okay? So he said this on the radio interview. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important that someone publicly acknowledges that. Trey, you know what's funny? All our old podcasts that I used to do with T-Bob are still up. And it was a lot of comedy stuff. T-Bob, we honestly just, we talked LSU football, but it was just stupid jokes. And I just started doing stand-up, and he just wanted to do something different. So if you want me and T-Bob content, there's a lot of old stuff, and some of the stories he shared with me on that show are just mind-boggling. I still think about some of the stuff we talked about on there. So if you want some of that, the name of the podcast was Tiger Tackle Football Podcast. But anyway, so the reason why that's important, Cliff, and I'm glad you brought up Austin Thomas, is that the quicker you acknowledge that the players now have more power than they ever have before, the better off you will be adjusting to it. Because, and Marcus brought this up earlier, you got to coddle these kids now. And I know that sounds, well, back in our day, we weren't coddled. But it's just the truth. You do have to coddle these kids more than you ever have before. Because the players have more power now. They can immediately transfer and play somewhere right away. So that's just a fact. That's not me saying, oh, these players are brats or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. Because I just want to be clear. But that meant a lot to me that Austin Thomas said that. Because if you say that, that helps you adjust more to guys that are superstars immediately when they step on campus. Yeah, Trey, it was a really good interview. So, I'm very impressed with T-Bob. Obviously, he just lost his co-host, and something else happened. So I've done some radio work from where I'm sitting, and they didn't send me a Comrex. So I was doing some ESPN radio stuff. They did not send me a Comrex, and this is for a station in South Carolina, so like ESPN radio affiliate. So at first I had to do internet radio over an actual radio broadcast, and there's a lot of feedback, and it echoes. And T-Bob had that happen to him when he had the biggest interviews of the offseason. He had Ed Orgeron on when Daronte Jones was being hired. So for him to still do great interviews, knowing all the different things he had to deal with, that could just be me showing love for another broadcaster, but it's pretty impressive. Yes, exactly, Trey. That was very interesting. He didn't want to say that, though, because it's a balancing act. I think we tend to forget because it's not a double-edged sword. That's not the right word to use. There's two truths, okay, when it comes to the college football player and program relationship. There's two truths, and they're on opposite ends of the spectrum, but they really do coincide with each other. There's one truth about the college athlete signing on to play at a school. Right when you sign on that dotted line, the school does have power, right? Because you're signing over your freedom to go commit and play for a school. You're signing officially to go to the school. So the school has a lot of power. And that is not the best for a player. Now, it's a little bit easier because of the transfer portal. The player does lose some power. But it's also true that a lot of college athletes don't move the needle. They just don't. Whether it is ratings, whether it's, your actual impact on the field, not many actually do move the needle all that much. They don't. Not the same in the NFL. Because in college, every single year, you're getting the 25 best players to come to your school at the big schools. So it's a weird thing that's going on right now in college athletics. And I think Austin Thomas, just based on that interview, has a good grasp on that dynamic. It is so weird. And Marcus makes a good point here. You can always walk away and enroll somewhere else. You're giving up some choice in exchange for an environment that gives you a better chance to make money at your sport. I saw this earlier this week. I'm telling you, if you do the right things, and even if you don't ever play, there is legit business opportunities that will arise simply because you're a former LSU football player. Okay? Because guess what? Every single business wants someone who is a football player to come work for them. They understand the importance of team. They understand the importance of hard work. For instance, okay, I wouldn't call him a close friend, but I would call him a friend. Will Blackwell is a good example of this. He played as good as you possibly could have at his position. He was an All-American. Tried for the NFL. I went to his Senior Bowl. He had a good week. Didn't work out in the NFL. He immediately got into the business world, and he's very successful. So much of the college experience is how much are you willing to humble yourself to better not only yourself, but the entire team. I'm telling you, I will trade everything to play one snap of LSU football or to put the pads on and run through the tunnel. I would do anything for that. There's so many people that wish they had that opportunity. And that's the thing. And that's the debate that comes with the NIL and player empowerment. And we can all be for those things. But being an LSU football player or being an Arkansas football player for that matter, it is a golden ticket. There are millions of fans that worship you when you put on that purple and gold. I'd be critical of any LSU football player. I would trade spots with them in a heartbeat. I'd trade spots for the backup deep snapper. It means that much to me. So it's huge. It's huge. College is all about networking. It's true. It's true. I agree with that, Marcus. I'm telling, and I see it all the time. I saw. I couldn't tell you how many LSU football players translated what they had into something new in their life. And Trey, that's a good. I saw that Michael Divinity. He got a car dealership. That's pretty great. You know what? I don't comment on media stuff. That's always kind of weird. It's kind of like the same thing with like a head coach being, and obviously on a different level. But I don't like commenting on anyone else's media career or potential openings. But yeah, I'm always open to hear anyone out. The hardest thing, and I'll share this personally, the hardest thing was so when I first started doing stand-up, I was taking every freaking gig. I was taking every gig because I wasn't that good and I needed to get on stage. And I was just saying yes to every opportunity. And since the pandemic, for the first time in my career, since doing stand, I was saying no. I was telling people no. I don't want to risk it. Unless the money is just so exorbitant And, I'm not Chappelle. I'm not going to get paid so much money to go do stand-up somewhere. And, dude, I would do anything to get back on a freaking stage right now. It's just not safe to do so unless, unless the social distancing and everything was right. So, yeah, I don't want to comment on openings or anything like that. Alan, I would, but this is an LSU football live stream, and I owe it to the audience. Now, if I had said on the LSU football live stream, "Hey, I'm doing 30 minutes of clean material," then I would be telling jokes. But this is an LSU football live stream. Carter, are there any talks of joining the LSU football staff as an analyst or anything? Are there any talks of joining the LSU football staff as an analyst? Can you clarify that question, Lewis? Are there any talks of potential analysts? Or are you asking me if they want me to be an analyst? Because I'd love to. That'd be a dream. But Trey, that's a good point. You interviewed Michael Divinity, key player on the 2019 team. And I'm telling you. Me joining the staff, I've never been reached out. I'll tell you this. Someone pretended to be Kelvin Shepard and kept emailing me. And so I had to reach out to Kelvin personally. And he said, no, it's not me. And I thought at first I was like, oh, crap, Kelvin Shepard reached out to me. And I've shared this before. I freaking love Kelvin Shepard. And I'm happy he's got a job at the NFL now. You know what? If LSU offered me a position to be an analyst, I'll sit right next to George Munoz and do my absolute best. This would be me as an analyst. Yeah, giving up the deep pass. Let's not do that. Devonta Smith, let's put our best guys on Devonta Smith. Let's not put Cordell Flott on Devonta Smith. It's no disrespect to Cordell Flott. But when transcendent NFL talents, a.k.a. the best SEC wide receiver statistically ever, is on the field, we need to guard them with our best defensive backs ever. So that is me being an analyst. But that's also, Lewis, me giving that information out for free. All right? And I want to share that information for free because guess what? Millions of people watching the Bama game are wondering the same thing. But yeah, I'd love to be an analyst. I do. Some of that clean material right there, Kyle. Exactly, man. It's weird. Is that so I mostly worked clean. I was mostly a clean comedian. But for shows that would allow cursing, and most of the shows I did, it was, you could talk about anything. I would curse, but it would be so unnecessary. It wouldn't be like funny cursing like Bill Burr or someone like that. All right, Marcus. I hope Sonya feels better. We're about to wrap this up as well. We're going to wrap this up at 3 hours. We are at 2 hours and 54 minutes. So if you guys want to keep going, as always, you could super chat. We'll hang out more. Alan said we're all else. Not good. But yeah, if there's any more super chats, I don't mind hanging out for a little bit longer. Or if you want to get any questions in before the 3 hour mark, go right on ahead. What's up, James? I tuned in for LSU talk. All right, James, we'll see you, man. Yeah, I'd love to do a podcast if everything worked out, the way. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what the best way to do it. Obviously, I used to do the podcast for SEC Country. Oh, James, are you mad? I hope you're not mad. What's your favorite Madden game? Good question. 2000 and I'm not a big gamer. Ooh, call-in show. And the hard part of a call-in show would be, policing what would be said. You never know what can happen with a call-in show. What defense would you prefer LSU to run? So it's complicated, and Daronte, he's not done his press conference yet. I expect that to be done in the next few days. So, obviously, it depends on what he says. Because I'm all down for doing what he wants to do. But I'm a believer in stopping the pass first. So, the Saints did a great job of this. The Rams did a great job of this last year. Playing your safeties deep, but having good enough playmakers in the box to make all the tackles there. So obviously, I think defense should focus on stopping the pass first. I think that's so important. And I think LSU focused on stopping the run first, which is what happens when you run a 4-3. The biggest problem I have with the 4-3 is that when there are 4 down linemen, as a play caller, that there are going to be no more than 7 guys guarding your 5 receivers. So you go in knowing that you have an advantage in a situation where more often than not, you're playing a defense that runs a 3-4. Now, most defenses that run a 3-4 are normally rushing 4 guys anyway. But with LSU, that they were going to have 4 guys attacking the backfield at all times. Okay? So if that allows you to manipulate the space a little bit easier as a play caller, knowing that those 7 guys can't cover that space as much as 8 guys can cover that. And McCat, you always come in at the last daggum second. Trey, that's a good idea, Trey. Set up a voicemail and answer if you stream or dedicate an episode. That way you could just screen the calls. That would be great, Trey. I'll let Cliff set up that voicemail. I'm kidding. Trey, I'll keep that in mind. I appreciate that. Well, all right, guys. I want to say thank you for watching this live stream. God, my tuna steaks are going to be cold. I'm kidding. Look at the big brain on him, right? But guys, thank you so much for making this live stream fun. Kane, thank you so much. Alan, Kyle, Ingram, everyone that watched this. Once again, the positive news for tonight, Will Campbell committed. Future LSU star right there. No, Alan. I guess I'm just not as talented as him. I'm joking. But yeah, we'll see you Tuesday night. That'll be our next live stream, and we'll talk to you then. All right, we'll have plenty of content posted from now until then. But until then, we'll see you soon. It's Power Hour LSU. Boom. Tuna steak night. Let's go. Let's go. Road to 4,000.